Ma'am, you clearly don't belong here. Security will escort you out immediately. The words sliced through the marble lobby of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel like a blade through silk. The woman speaking wore a crisp white blouse and a smirk that could freeze champagne. Her target, a poised black woman in an impeccable charcoal suit holding a leather briefcase worth more than most people's monthly salary. What happened next would destroy careers, spark nationwide conversations, and prove that sometimes the most devastating revenge comes wrapped in perfect composure. These black stories of workplace discrimination happen every day across America, but this particular moment would become one of those real-life stories that changes everything. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before anyone knew your qualifications? What this woman did next will restore your faith in justice. 3:07 p.m. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Dar. Angela Reed adjusted her luxury brand briefcase and checked her luxury watch brand watch, 8 minutes until her quarterly board meeting, 8 minutes to cross a lobby that should have taken 30 seconds. The problem stood directly in her path. Ms. Jessica Stone, the hotel's guest services manager, had planted herself between Dr. Reed and the executive elevator bank. Like a designer-dressed sentinel, her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun that matched her expression. "Excuse me," Dr. Reed said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "I need to access the executive floors." Ms. Stone's eyes traveled from Dr. Reed's shoes to her briefcase, lingering with obvious skepticism. "The executive floors are restricted to registered guests and authorized personnel only." "I understand the policy. Do you?" Ms. Stone's smile was razor-thin. "Because our clientele expects a certain atmosphere. I'm sure you can appreciate that." Around them, the lobby hummed with afternoon activity. Business travelers checked their phones, tourists snapped photos of the crystal chandeliers. A young woman near the concierge desk had her phone raised, live streaming to her followers. Dr. Reed reached into her briefcase and withdrew a platinum card that caught the light like liquid metal. "I believe this should suffice." Ms. Stone barely glanced at the luxury credit card brand before shaking her head. "Anyone can have a credit card. What I need is proof that you belong in this establishment." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Reed's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. She pulled out her phone and began recording. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Dr. Reed's voice remained perfectly level. "I want to make sure I understand your position correctly." Ms. Stone's cheeks flushed, but she doubled down. "I said, this establishment has standards. We cater to a specific demographic, and frankly, you're making our guests uncomfortable." The live streaming woman had moved closer, her phone capturing every word. Her viewer count climbed steadily, 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. Comments flooded in. Flooded the screen. "This is insane. Is this really happening in 2024? Someone needs to record this," but Dr. Reed had already thought of that. Her phone was positioned perfectly, capturing Ms. Stone's face and the hotel's distinctive marble columns in the background. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," Dr. Reed said. Ms. Stone straightened her shoulders. "I am the supervisor on duty, and I'm telling you that unless you're a registered guest or have specific business here, you need to leave." "I do have specific business here." "What kind of business?" Dr. Reed checked her watch again, 3:10 p.m. 5 minutes. "The kind that requires access to the executive conference room." Ms. Stone laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The executive conference room? Do you know what that space costs per hour? Do you know the kind of people who use that room?" "I have some idea." "I doubt that." Ms. Stone gestured toward the main entrance. "Look, I'm trying to be polite here, but you're clearly in the wrong place. There's a perfectly nice budget hotel chain 6 blocks south that might be more suitable." The live stream viewer count hit 50,000. Comments were pouring in so fast they blurred together. Someone had started a hashtag, #HotelDiscrimination. Dr. Reed's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, board meeting, conference room A, 3:15 p.m. She dismissed the notification and continued recording. So to be clear, you're refusing me access to the executive floors because you don't believe I belong here, is that correct? I'm refusing you access because you haven't provided adequate identification or proof of business, even though I've shown you my credit card. Anyone can get a credit card. This particular card has a $50,000 annual fee. Ms. Stone's expression wavered for just a moment, then she regained her composure. I don't care if it has $1 million fee. Policy is policy. A security guard approached from across the lobby. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and looked uncomfortable with whatever conversation he'd been asked to join. Everything all right here, Miss Stone? He asked. Robert, this woman is refusing to leave. She's insisting she has business in the executive conference room, but she won't provide proper identification. Mr. Robert Greene looked between them, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Ma'am, if you could just show us some. Dr. Reed reached for her wallet, then paused. Her phone was still recording, the live stream was still running, and somewhere in the hotel's extensive security system, cameras were capturing every moment of this exchange. She had a choice to make. Show her identification now and end this quietly, or let it play out and see exactly how far they were willing to take their assumptions. Her watch read 3:12 p.m. 3 minutes until the most important board meeting of the quarter. 3 minutes until 12 executives would be waiting for her in conference room A to discuss the company's expansion plans and diversity initiatives. 3 minutes until she had to make a decision that would change everything. Dr. Reed slipped her wallet back. Not her briefcase without removing her ID. I'd prefer to speak with the general manager, she said. Ms. Stone's nostrils flared. The general manager is in meetings all afternoon. Robert, please escort this woman to the exit. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. I'm not going anywhere. The lobby had grown quieter, conversations died as guests became aware of the confrontation unfolding near the executive elevators. Phones appeared in hands like flowers blooming after rain. The live-streaming woman had moved even closer, her viewer count now exceeded 75,000. Comments scrolled by in an endless stream, this is disgusting. What hotel is this? Someone needs to call the news. Is this real? A businessman in an expensive suit stopped mid-stride to watch. A couple with shopping bags from high-end boutiques whispered to each other while their teenage daughter recorded with her phone. Dr. Reed's expression remained serene, but her hand found her phone again, not to record this time, but to send a text message, to legal department. Subject, urgent discrimination incident. Message, document everything. Full investigation required. Civil rights violation in progress. The message sent with a soft chime. Ma'am, Mr. Robert Greene said, his voice gentler than Ms. Stone's but no less firm, I really need you to come with me. On what grounds? Trespassing. I'm standing in a public lobby. It's private property open to the public for business purposes. Ms. Stone stepped forward. You're disrupting our guests and creating a scene. That's grounds for removal. Dr. Reed gestured to the growing crowd. I'm standing quietly, they're the ones creating a scene. Another security guard materialized from the direction of the gift shop. This one was younger, with eager eyes and a hand that kept drifting toward his radio. Problem here? He asked. No problem, Dr. Reed said before anyone else could speak. I'm waiting for an elevator. She's been asked to leave, Ms. Stone snapped, multiple times. And I've explained that I have business here. The young security guard, his name tag read, Alex, looked to Mr. Robert Greene for guidance. Mr. Greene looked tired. Ma'am, what kind of business? A board meeting. Alex laughed before he could stop himself. A board meeting here? Conference room A, 15th floor. The laughter died, Alex's eyes darted to Ms. Stone, who had gone very still. That's. Alex started, then stopped. That's what Dr. Reed asked. That's the hospitality group name suite, he finished quietly. Ms. Stone shot him a look that could have melted steel. It doesn't matter what suite it is, she doesn't have authorization. But something had changed in the dynamic. Alex was studying Dr. Reed's face with new interest. Mr. Robert Greene had taken a small step back. Dr. Reed's phone buzzed again, this time it was a call. "Excuse me," she said, answering. "Angela Reed." The name hung in the air like a dropped glass waiting to shatter. Ms. Stone's face went through several color changes, pink to red to white to green. "Yes, I'm running a." A few minutes late, Dr. Reed continued into the phone. "There's been a minor issue in the lobby." "No, nothing that can't be resolved. I'll be up shortly." She ended the call and looked expectantly at the three people surrounding her. Alex was backing away slowly, as if distance might protect him from whatever was about to happen. Mr. Robert Greene was staring at Dr. Reed with dawning recognition. Ms. Stone was frozen, her mouth slightly open, her face the color of old newspaper. "Now then," Dr. Reed said pleasantly, "about that elevator access." The live stream had reached 100,000 viewers. Someone had identified the hotel and started calling the main number. The hashtag hotel discrimination was trending in 3 states. A guest services associate hurried over from the front desk, her face flushed with exertion and panic. "Ms. Stone," she whispered urgently, "there's been a mistake, a big mistake." "Not now, Sarah," Dr. Reed replied. "But Ms. Stone, the calls won't stop. People are saying we're discriminating against." "I said not now." Sarah retreated but not far, she hovered at the edge of the group, her eyes darting between Dr. Reed and her phone, which was lighting up with notifications. Dar. Reed checked her watch. 3:14 p.m. "I have 1 minute to make my meeting," she said. "Are you going to let me pass, or shall I explain to the board why their quarterly review is delayed?" "The board?" Ms. Stone's voice cracked slightly. "The board of directors. Hospitality group name. You know, the company that owns this hotel." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of realization through the crowd. Alex was now halfway across the lobby, trying to disappear into the afternoon check-in crowd. Mr. Robert Greene had removed his hand from his radio and was studying the floor tiles with intense concentration. Sarah had her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid, urgent whispers, and Ms. Stone stood frozen in the center of it all, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. The elevator bank chimed softly. The executive elevator, the one Dr. Reed had been trying to reach for the past 7 minutes, opened its polished steel doors. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, saw the crowd, and approached with quick, nervous steps. "Ms. Reed," he called out, "the board is waiting. Is everything all right?" Dr. Reed smiled for the first time since entering the lobby. "Everything's fine, Mr. David Adams. Just a small misunderstanding about building access." Mr. Adams, the hotel's assistant general manager, looked around the lobby, taking in the security guards, the phones, the live stream, and Ms. Stone's stricken expression. His face went through the same color changes Ms. Stone's had, minus the recovery. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." The lobby fell silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning and the distant ding of elevator bells. Mr. Adams stood frozen, his face cycling through expressions like a broken traffic light, recognition, horror, the desperate hope that he was hallucinating. Dr. Angela Reed, CEO of Hospitality Group name, owner of 43 luxury hotels across North America, including the one they were standing in, adjusted her briefcase strap and stepped toward the elevator. "Shall we go up?" she asked Mr. Adams, her voice carrying the same calm authority it had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Adams's voice cracked like ice on a lake. I had no idea you were in your lobby being harassed by your staff, having my civil rights violated on camera in front of 100,000 people. The number was conservative, the live stream had gone viral across multiple platforms. Hotel discrimination was trending nationally. The hotel's phone system was overwhelmed with calls. Dr. Reed turned to face Ms. Stone, who looked like she was calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Jessica, isn't it? Dr. Reed's voice was silk over steel. I believe we were discussing hotel policies, something about standards and demographics. Ms. Stone opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Her hands trembled as she tried to smooth her already perfect hair. Cat got your tongue. The live-streaming woman had moved closer, her phone capturing every nuance of Ms. Stone's collapse. Come on, tell the CEO why she doesn't belong in her own hotel. I didn't know, Ms. Stone finally managed. You didn't know what? That I was the CEO or that discrimination is illegal regardless of who you're discriminating against. Dr. Reed's phone buzzed with a text from her legal department. Press release drafted, civil rights attorneys on standby, HR wants a full report. She dismissed the notification and continued looking at Ms. Stone, who seemed to be shrinking with each passing second. Here's what you did know, Dr. Reed said, her voice never rising above conversational level. You knew I was a black woman in an expensive suit with a $50,000 credit card asking for elevator access. You knew I was polite, well-dressed, and clearly belonged in a business environment. But you decided that none of that mattered because of what I looked like. The crowd had grown, hotel guests lined the mezzanine level, looking down at the scene unfolding below. Staff members peered out from behind reception desks and concierge stations. Mr. Robert Green, the older security guard, had his radio in his hand but seemed afraid to use it. Alex had disappeared entirely, probably into the staff break room where he was updating his resume. Sarah, the guest services associate, was still on her phone, but her whispered conversation had taken on the tone of someone explaining a natural disaster to their supervisor. David, Dr. Reed said, turning to the assistant general manager, how long has Ms. Stone been employed here? 18 months, he answered automatically, then looked like he wanted to swallow the words. And in those 18 months, has she received our diversity and inclusion training? Yes, ma'am. All management staff complete the program within their first 90 days. Excellent. So she was fully aware of company policy regarding discrimination? David nodded miserably. And she was aware of the legal implications of denying service based on race? Other than perfect, Dr. Reed's smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. That establishes knowledge and intent. My attorneys will be pleased. Ms. Stone found her voice. Ms. Reed, I want to apologize. I made a terrible mistake. If I could just. Oh, you're going to apologize, but not to me. Dr. Reed gestured toward the phone, still recording the live stream, still broadcasting, the crowd still watching. You're going to apologize to them, to the 200,000 people who watched you demonstrate exactly why this industry still needs civil rights legislation. To every black woman who's ever been made to feel like she doesn't belong somewhere. She has every right to be. Ms. Stone's face crumpled. Please, I need this job. I have student loans, rent. You should have thought of that before you decided to play racial gatekeeper in my lobby. Dr. Reed's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, it was her board chair, probably wondering where she was. Excuse me, she said, answering. Mr. John Davies? Yes, I'm downstairs. No, we're going to need to adjust the agenda. We have a personnel issue that requires immediate attention. She paused, listening. Yes, it's being live-streamed. No, I couldn't have planned better publicity for our diversity initiatives if I'd tried. We'll discuss it upstairs. She ended the call and looked around the lobby one more time. The crowd had tripled in size. Hotel guests were recording their own videos, adding their commentary to the growing online conversation. A news van pulled up outside, its satellite dish already extending toward the sky. "David, I need you to do something for me," Dr. Reed said. "Anything, Ms. Reed." "I need you to preserve all security footage from the past hour. Every camera angle, every time stamp. Our legal department will want copies." "Yes, ma'am. And I need you to compile a list of every employee who witnessed this incident and failed to intervene." David's face went even paler. "Ma'am, I'm not sure. I'm not asking for opinions, David. I'm giving instructions." She turned to Mr. Robert Green, who straightened unconsciously. "Robert, you showed more professionalism than your colleague, but you still attempted to remove a customer based solely on another employee's biased assessment. That's going in my report." Mr. Green nodded stiffly. "Understood, ma'am." "Good. Now I believe I have a board meeting to attend." Dr. Reed walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the rhythm of inevitability. As the elevator doors began to close, she looked out at the lobby one final time. Ms. Stone was crying openly now, surrounded by phones and cameras and the wreckage of her career. David was speaking rapidly into his radio, probably alerting the general manager that his afternoon was about to get much worse. And somewhere in the crowd, a dozen people were already writing the social media posts that would turn this incident into a case study taught in business schools across the country. The elevator doors closed with a soft whisper, but Dr. Reed's work was just beginning. The 15th floor of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Management strategies are ineffective when the evidence is already public and permanent. The screens now displayed a cascade of social media posts, news articles, and commentary pieces that had appeared in the past hour. Hotel Discrimination was trending alongside Hospitality Group name and CEO and picked up the story 18 minutes ago. Dr. Reed noted Fox Business ran a segment 12 minutes ago. The Wall Street Journal has a reporter in our lobby right now. Mr. John Davies rubbed his temples. What's our exposure beyond this property? System-wide reputation damage. Our Grand Metropolitan brand operates in 43 locations. Early social media analysis suggests calls for boycotts across all properties. She clicked again. The next slide showed preliminary financial projections that made several board members uneasy. Conservative estimates suggest a 15 to 20% decline in bookings over the next quarter. If we handle this poorly, that translates to approximately $47 million in lost revenue. And if we handle it well, asked Ms. Patricia Brooks. If we handle it perfectly, we might limit the damage to 8 to 10%. But perfectly requires immediate, decisive action that demonstrates genuine commitment to change, not just damage control. The presentation shifted to show a detailed timeline of the incident synchronized with social media engagement metrics. The discrimination occurred over a 7-minute period, Dr. Reed explained. During that time, our employee doubled down on her position despite multiple opportunities to reconsider. She demonstrated knowledge of company policy, willful violation of civil rights law, and potential criminal civil rights violations. Board member Mr. David Kim spoke up. What about the other employees involved? Assistant General Manager Mr. David Adams showed appropriate concern once he understood the situation, but his response was reactive rather than proactive. Security guard Mr. Robert Green demonstrated some professionalism but still participated in the attempted removal. Security guard Alex fled the scene entirely. Dr. Reed paused the presentation on a slide titled Personnel Actions. Ms. Jessica Stone will be terminated for cause effective immediately. Her actions constitute gross misconduct under Section 7.3 of the Employee Handbook, willful violation of company diversity policy, and potential criminal civil rights violations. She's already been fired? Mr. John Davies asked. She will be as soon as this meeting concludes. I wanted board approval before taking action that might affect our legal position. What about the others? Mr. David Adams will receive additional training and a formal reprimand. His file will reflect this incident, but termination isn't warranted based on his conduct. Mr. Robert Green will undergo mandatory bias training and a performance review. Alex will be terminated for abandoning his post during a security incident. Dr. Reed clicked to the final slide, systemic response. But personnel actions alone won't address the underlying issues this incident has exposed. We need comprehensive policy reforms that demonstrate. To demonstrate our commitment to preventing future discrimination, the board leaned forward as Dr. Reed outlined her strategy. First, immediate implementation of a zero-tolerance discrimination policy with a 24-hour anonymous reporting hotline. Second, mandatory quarterly bias training for all management staff with annual certification requirements. Third, installation of AI-powered monitoring systems in our security cameras to flag potential discrimination incidents in real time. Ms. Patricia Brooks raised an eyebrow. AI monitoring? Is that even legal? Completely legal for pattern recognition and incident flagging. We're not recording conversations or violating privacy, we're identifying behavioral patterns that suggest discriminatory treatment. What's the cost? Mr. John Davies asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be pleasant. $2,100,000 annually across all properties. But consider the alternative, our potential liability for this single incident exceeds that figure. Dr. Reed stood and walked to the window, looking down at the crowd of reporters and protesters that had gathered on the sidewalk below. This incident happened because we failed to create systems that prevent discrimination, she said. We relied on policies and training that clearly weren't sufficient. We trusted individual employees to overcome their biases without providing them with the tools and oversight necessary to ensure success. She turned back to face the board. The question isn't whether we can afford to implement these changes, the question is whether we can afford not to. Mr. John Davies looked around the table at his fellow board members, reading their expressions like a poker player calculating odds. All in favor of Dr. Reed's proposed personnel actions and policy reforms, 12 hands went up. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. John Davies' relief was palpable. Angela, you have full authority to proceed. Dr. Reed's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Jessica Stone wants to speak with you personally. Says she has information about other incidents. She showed the message to Mr. John Davies, who grimaced. Handle it however you think best, he said. At this point, we're entirely in crisis management mode. Dr. Reed nodded and began packing her briefcase. I'll be downstairs dealing with the immediate situation. The rest of you should prepare for extensive media inquiries over the next 48 hours. As she headed toward the elevator, Ms. Patricia Brooks called out, Angela, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you. Dr. Reed paused at the doorway. Don't be sorry for me, Patricia. Be sorry for every customer who's experienced this kind of treatment when they didn't have the power to fight back. The elevator doors closed behind her, carrying her back down to a lobby that would never look quite the same again. The lobby had transformed into a media circus. News crews lined the sidewalk outside while reporters interviewed guests, employees, and anyone willing to share their thoughts on camera. The hashtag hotel discrimination now had 4.7 million. Dr. Reed stepped out of the elevator to find Mr. David Adams waiting for her, his face the color of fresh concrete. Ms. Reed, I prepared the termination paperwork for Ms. Stone, he said, holding out a folder with trembling hands. She's requested a meeting with you before security escorts her out. Where is she now? Employee break room, under supervision. Dr. Reed nodded. And the media situation? Our public relations firm is here. They're recommending a press conference within the hour. Good. Have them prepare a statement, but I'll review it before anything goes public. She walked through the lobby, noting how staff members straightened when they saw her, how guests whispered and pointed, how the very air seemed charged with the electricity of change in motion. The employee break room was a small, windowless space behind the kitchen. Ms. Jessica Stone sat at a round table, surrounded by boxes of tissues and the wreckage of her career. Her mascara had created dark trails down her cheeks, and her hands shook as she tried to drink from a paper cup. "Ms. Stone," Dr. Reed said, entering the room. "I understand you wanted to speak with me." Ms. Stone looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Ms. Reed, I need you to know that I'm not a racist person. I was just following what I thought were the hotel's unspoken policies about the kind of guests we catered to, about maintaining the hotel's image." Ms. Stone's voice was barely above a whisper. "I was told during training that we needed to be selective about who we allowed in certain areas." Dr. Reed sat down across from her. "Who told you that?" "My supervisor, the previous guest services manager. She said that wealthy guests expected a certain environment." "Did she use those exact words?" "She said we needed to be careful about letting the wrong kind of people into the executive areas, that it could affect our reputation and our revenue." Dr. Reed pulled out her phone and began recording. "I need you to repeat that exactly as you remember it." "I don't want to get anyone else in trouble," Ms. Stone said. "You're already in legal jeopardy for civil rights violations. Your cooperation in identifying systemic issues might be the only thing that prevents a federal investigation of your personal conduct." Ms. Stone's hands stilled. "What do you mean, federal investigation?" "The Department of Justice takes civil rights violations very seriously, especially when they're recorded and broadcast to millions of people. You could face criminal charges, personal liability, and federal prosecution." The color drained from Ms. Stone's face. "But if I cooperate, if you provide complete information about discriminatory practices and policies, our legal department will consider that cooperation when determining how to proceed." For the next 20 minutes, Ms. Stone outlined a pattern of subtle but systematic discrimination that had been embedded in the hotel's culture for years, informal dress codes that disproportionately affected minority guests, sessions that emphasized maintaining standards in ways that encouraged racial profiling, performance reviews that rewarded staff for guest selectivity. Dr. Reed recorded every word, taking notes that would become the foundation for a comprehensive investigation into company-wide practices. "Ms. Stone, your employment is terminated effective immediately," Dr. Reed said when Ms. Stone finished. "You'll receive severance pay as outlined in your contract, but you're required to sign a cooperation agreement with our legal department." "What happens now?" "Now you write a public apology that acknowledges your mistakes without making excuses. You participate in our internal investigation, and you hope that your cooperation demonstrates enough genuine remorse to prevent criminal prosecution." Ms. Stone nodded, tears starting to flow. "Ms. Reed, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I understand how wrong I was." Dr. Reed stood to leave. "Ms. Stone, your apology isn't what matters here. What matters is making sure this never happens to anyone else." An hour later, Dr. Reed stood behind a podium in the hotel's grand ballroom, facing a room full of reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. The press conference was being live-streamed across multiple platforms, ensuring that her response would reach the same viral audience that had witnessed the original incident. "This afternoon, one of our employees engaged in discriminatory conduct that violated our company policies, civil rights law, and basic human decency," she began. "I want to be absolutely clear, there is no excuse for what happened. There is no context that makes it acceptable. There is no explanation that justifies treating anyone with such disrespect." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "But I'm not here to simply apologize and move on. I'm here to announce concrete changes that will ensure this never happens again." The reforms she outlined were comprehensive and immediate. A $2,100,000 annual investment in bias prevention technology, including AI-powered monitoring systems and real-time incident detection, mandatory quarterly training for all employees with annual certification requirements, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination with automatic termination. More importantly, she announced the creation of an independent oversight board, chaired by civil rights attorneys and community leaders, with the power to investigate complaints and recommend systemic changes. "We're also implementing financial accountability measures," Dr. Reed continued. Management bonuses will now be tied to diversity metrics and discrimination prevention. Employees who report discriminatory conduct will receive whistleblower protections and, when appropriate, financial rewards. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Reed, critics might say these changes are just public relations gestures. How do we know they'll be permanent? Because I'm making them legally binding, Yar. Reed replied. These policies will be written into our corporate charter, and our franchise agreements. Future violations will trigger automatic financial penalties and, in severe cases, franchise termination. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. Dr. Reed answered every question with the same directness she'd used in the lobby, acknowledging the company's failures while outlining specific steps for improvement. When it was over, she returned to her office on the 20th floor and pulled up the social media analytics one more time. The conversation had shifted. Hotel discrimination was still trending, but it was now accompanied by systemic change and accountability matters. Comments that had been uniformly critical 12 hours earlier now included praise for the company's response. More importantly, other hospitality companies were already announcing their own policy reviews and diversity initiatives, trying to get ahead of similar incidents at their properties. Dr. Reed's phone rang. It was her daughter calling from her college dorm room. Mom, I saw the news. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Actually, I'm better than fine. The whole thing looked awful. I can't believe someone treated you like that. Dr. Reed looked out her window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the evening darkness. Somewhere out there, other people were facing discrimination, other employees were making biased decisions, and other systems were failing to protect civil rights. But not here. Not anymore. Sometimes awful things happen for important reasons, she told her daughter. Sometimes they happen so we can fix what's broken. 6 months later, the Grand Metropolitan Hotel had become an unlikely symbol of corporate accountability and systematic change. The lobby that had once been the site of viral discrimination now hosted diversity training seminars for hospitality industry leaders from across the country. Dr. Angela Reed stood at the same spot where Ms. Jessica Stone had tried to deny her access, now addressing a conference room full of executives who had come to learn from her company's transformation. The technology we've implemented has prevented 47 potential discrimination incidents across our hotel chain, she reported to the assembled crowd. Our AI monitoring system flags concerning behavior patterns and alerts management within 30 seconds. The numbers were impressive. Guest satisfaction scores had increased by 23% across all properties, employee retention was up 18%, and most importantly, discrimination complaints had dropped to zero. But technology alone isn't the solution, Dr. Reed continued. Cultural change requires sustained commitment at every level of leadership. The reforms had spread far beyond hospitality group name. Within 3 months of the viral incident, 16 major hotel chains had implemented similar monitoring systems. The Hospitality Industry Diversity Council, formed in direct response to the Grand Metropolitan Hotel incident, now included representatives from over 200 companies. Ms. Jessica Stone had become an unexpected advocate for change. Her public apology video, viewed over 10 million times, it included a detailed explanation of how unconscious bias training had helped her recognize her mistakes. She now worked for a nonprofit organization focused on bias prevention in customer service industries. I was never taught to see my own prejudices, she said in a follow-up interview 6 months later. The incident at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel was horrible, but it forced me to confront who I really was and who I wanted to become. The financial impact had been significant but ultimately positive. Despite initial stock price drops and boycott threats, Hospitality Group name's revenue had increased by 12% as travelers specifically chose hotels known for their inclusive policies. Prestigious business school now used the Grand Metropolitan Hotel incident as a case study in crisis management and systematic reform. Students analyzed how Dr. Reed's measured response had transformed a potential corporate disaster into a catalyst for industry-wide change. The key lesson, according to Professor Dr. Sarah Kim's business ethics course, is that true leadership requires the courage to address systemic problems rather than individual symptoms. The live stream that started it all had been archived by the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture as an example of how social media could drive civil rights progress in the digital age. These touching stories of transformation remind us that real-life stories of discrimination, while painful, can become powerful catalysts for justice. Black stories like Dr. Reed's demonstrate that strategic thinking and systematic change create more lasting impact than anger or revenge. Dr. Reed's approach had proved that the most effective response to prejudice wasn't emotional retaliation but intelligent restructuring of the systems that allowed discrimination to flourish. Power isn't about punishment, she often said in her speaking engagements. It's about creating environments where everyone can thrive. The viral moment that could have destroyed careers and damaged reputations had instead spawned life stories of growth, learning, and genuine progress. Now it's your turn to make a difference. Share your own experiences with workplace discrimination in the comments below. Have you witnessed bias in customer service? Have you been treated unfairly because of your appearance or background? Subscribe for more inspiring stories of people who transformed prejudice into progress. Hit that notification bell and share this video with someone who needs to see that justice is possible when we fight bias with brilliance, not just outrage. Together, we can create a world where everyone truly belongs.